teachers of Hebrew, and the focus on and her focus on curriculum, a very strong focus on curriculum and learning design. And as you can see, affiliated with Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. The title of the paper, as you can see, is Interruption, Suspension, and Sustaining Catalysts for Change in Future Education After COVID-19. With the recognition of the nature and magnitude of COVID-19 disruption in education and the daunting challenges faced by educators as they necessarily adapted to and invented and elaborated online delivery, this particular paper asserts that the complex and ongoing relations between education and the world of ongoing and dramatic technological advance and transformation are revealed. This is a hopeful and promising perspective as I read it, as new and expansive opportunities are emerging to bring education and the real world context and relevance into a productive dialogue. So I'll turn the floor over to Alana.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic encountered educators with great interruption as online teaching became the only way to carry on education. Teacher had no choice but dialogue with the reality, with digitized word and constant changes. While the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the complex relationship between education and a world in a liminal stage, like we have seen throughout the conference, it also offered a unique opportunity for fruitful and much needed dialogue between education and the real world. I just want to clarify, I'm using the terms educators and teachers interchangeably. And when I refer to educators in a general sense and teachers to teachers of Hebrew as a second language, which I work with. In this presentation, I changed the slide. In this presentation, I discussed the counter of education with digitalization prior and during the COVID-19 from the perspective of Gert Biesta's three domains of teachers' work: interruption, suspension, and sustains. This based on my work with teachers of Hebrew as additional language. Great Biesta's three domains of future education are interruption of desire, when we encounter someone, something that's holding us from fulfilling a desire. Suspension, to have the time and space to transform our desire. And sustains, staying in a difficult middle ground and to put one desire in a dialogue with the world. There are actually three ways, according to Freud, to deal with interruption. Oops, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Okay, never mind. Push hard to overcome the resistance, withdraw from intention. If we're talking about teachers, many teachers will just not try to use technology as it's intimidating might be. And staying in the middle ground by having an essential type of dialogue, what Biesta refers to as a grown-upness. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. So the encounter with the digital revolution was a great interruption for traditional education system. It dictated a rapid and massive changes, new reality, and adoption to new concepts. The educational system and educator have struggled with technology and with the new concept it introduced. And although there is ongoing interaction between education and digitalization, um, the relationships seems to be stuck in the interruption stage. Um, Teachers were forced to deal with losing monopoly on providing knowledge, losing monopoly on owning knowledge, and face new rules, new concept, as I said, and most of all, unpredicted future. All that with not having time to try, to fail, and to fail again, to fail better with technology. The outcome then is that educational system remain trapped in the interruption phase, many struggling with technology integration and the concepts. From a practical perspective, the system challenge of education with new development will revolve around learning, operating, and technology integration. In the conceptual aspect, present the education system with more complex issues such innovation, adaptation, and creativity. Although the COVID pandemic was a painful interruption, it was helpful in moving education toward suspension phase, the one that's needed in order to establish relationship with the interruption, a dialogue, to start a dialogue. It was an opportunity for suspension. Um, it was also gave an opportunity to existential learning, a learning that occurs in particular way in which we meet the world and ourselves through the subjects we learn. We can call it also a tactic. It allowed teachers to gain unformulated knowledge, which called tactic knowledge, which is critical for learning as it was provide us with the original understanding of experience. This is a quote from Maxine Green. The experienced teacher who are not digital citizen can be compared to taking part in a sort of immersion program to learn a new language. That's how the experience during COVID-19 felt for some of the teachers. Okay. Teacher gained awareness and attending to new needs. They became more conscientious and reflective. They became more open to new presentation and idea. They took risks and they gained tactic knowledge, as I said. Sustains. The question remains is sustains. How to support the educators in maintaining the dialogue with digitalization and in reaching and remaining in the middle ground and to successfully meet future needs. For that, we should get the grasp on innovation, autonomy, and creativity. What does it mean? getting grasp on innovation. To reach innovation in education, educators need to adopt new forms of learning and doing. In other words, they need to adopt different ways of thinking, to challenge previous knowledge, to gain more insight, and to create new forms, reforms, or ideas. At the beginning of the pandemic, teachers searched for as many digital tools they could find without discriminating between tools that have an added pedagogical value versus tools that offer nothing new or useful. While technology can benefit innovation, it does not necessarily guarantee innovation. The myth anecdote about how the US government spent millions in efforts to develop a pen that will work in space while the Russians simply use a pencil illustrate well the difference between technology and innovation. It is not easy to adapt to new ways of thinking as it conflicts with previous knowledge and skill. More so, at times we might be under the impression that we have indeed adapted a new way, while in truth, we're still in the process. The COVID-19 experience was only a jump start of a long process. Although educators learn new skill and concept during the pandemic, they still need to develop creativity in the use of the new technology and to apply new form of learning and doing. They need to step away from standardized and moralized pedagogy and enhance existential learning, creativity, and learners' autonomy.
5 minutes.
Getting grasp on autonomy. Sorry. In professional model to producer not only service a need but also defined it. Meaning teachers need the autonomy as well. During the COVID-19, teacher gained an autonomy to explore new teaching material, new teaching approaches and strategies. Getting grasp on creativity. The work of art is the reconstruction of present in light of the future. During the COVID-19, we saw teachers engage with students over Zoom, exploring different digital tools, developing creative teaching material, and collaborate among themselves. We may not be able to predict the future, but we can help to shape it. Robinson, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. And as with previous presentations, its floor is open for comments and questions. And one can write them in the chat as well. But hearing none, I'll, as always, exercise my executive privilege by asking the question. And I'm struck. I'm struck with the fact that the principles of what you're referring to as existential learning and knowledge, have been with us for a long time, but not properly activated during all that time. I mean, it dates back certainly to John Dewey. Experiential learning, and of course, who comes to mind is the principles of democratic education in Paulo Freire, Freire, excuse me, and many others. So the three principles that come out of what I think are existential learning suggest to me, along with the quote from Gregory and Caulfield, that school is the least evolving, perhaps the least nimble institution in terms of all of these crises. I wonder if you might attribute this to a range of other issues that are political and economic. In other words, emergency, as I said yesterday in my own presentation, emergency and solid pedagogical philosophy don't go well together. I agree with your critique completely in terms of some of the deficiencies and challenges, but our universities and governments and administrations not, during the pandemic, they're looking at their budgets now and they're going, we saved a lot of money. And the one thing that I think is a context that you might reflect on out loud, I hope, is precisely this idea of the fact that we've got new emerging managerial, they're constantly emerging managerial models, accountabilities, outcomes, the efficiencies of online learning. So that I think the argument, what I'm asking is that the responsibilities don't always lie with the teachers in terms of crises, but sometimes with governments financially put upon administrations and so on. And I wonder if you might have a view on that.
Yeah, I actually didn't take it, I didn't think about that from that perspective. I really thought from the limited world of a teacher. And if we're talking about availability of education, I think the one thing that we learned from the experience of COVID-19, with respect to technology and with respect to online teaching that has its own space, you know, I think the message is not to consist only on technology, but rather to figure out how, as educators, we can be more creative, more innovative. It doesn't have to. I don't think it has to do specifically with technology. I think it can be within the classes. I think it's an opportunity to evaluate all the statics of education. It is not to say that we need now millions of dollars to develop technology necessarily in the schools. Yes, we do need to integrate technology, absolutely, but that does not guarantee innovative. That doesn't prepare our student necessarily to a quick adaptation to changes or to creative thinking. So I would say we need to be very thoughtful of where we're taking it from now. And not to be, you know.
I agree. I appreciate your insights on that. Certainly, the evangelism around technology and education has been with us since the early 90s, maybe a little earlier, certainly. And there has been a sense that technology also always somehow has an ameliorative function. If there's a problem, if there's a crisis, if there's an emergency, it's technology is the answer. And as you know, the university was characterized as a fossil and woefully inadequate in terms of its vision of the future. And I think you're correct in identifying technology is in the epicenter of that, those contestations and key to the future of education. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move along. There we